Hello again in this installment of Spiritual Wisdom. I'm grateful to all of you following me here and of this little community here on YouTube. If you've been here before, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Nicholas and on my channel I talk about witchcraft, Wicca, paganism, self-love, crystals and their magical properties, and all matter of philosophical and spiritual topics. So if you're interested in those types of things, you know what to do. Please subscribe, join this amazing community and click the bell icon to be notified each time I post a video. Now today I'm going to be talking, though I'm still doing a crystal series talking about all the different crystals I've got in my collection and how we can use it. Today's video is a bit different where I'm talking about psychic readings and sort of the difference between a query reading and a blind reading. So a query reading is where you're the client who goes to a psychic, has a question, but you ask the psychic your question and they'll do some divination on it. So it could be some examples. You could go to a psychic and go, am I in the right relationship? Now, more often than not, the answer's not going to be a straight yes or no. It could be, the reading could show, but the relationship you're in is not bad in the sense that, you know, you're really struggling maybe financially, but your partner doesn't judge you for that. And but they've got money, and with the money they've got, they look after you, you know, they treat you to nice things, you communicate. So all in all, it could be a nice relationship. The reading could show that, but you could do better. That could come up in the reading. You could do better because you may love that person, but you're not in love with them, and the spark and that is not there anymore. A reading could also show that the relationship you're in is very toxic, very negative, and it's not good for you or your well-being, and that you should leave that person because they're not good for you. A reading could reveal that. Also, you could say I'm in the right relationship because you're curious, and the reading could show you're in a very good and loving, supportive relationship, and there's nothing wrong in your relationship, you know. So that a query reading is where you, the client, have got a question. And you want, and you go to a psychic, you ask the question, and the psychic will do divination on it to give you that answer. Now, it's not always straightforward because sometimes somebody could go to you and say, are they going to pass their driving lesson test? And then let's say this person does go for the driving lesson test and they fail. They'll blame you for it. And I know that because of experience. But that does not mean, as a client, if a psychic says but you are going to pass the driving lesson test and you fail it, that's not a reflection on the psychic. It's just because what the psychic is feeling is, though it was a yes what they said, you know, it's probability. So like, because when we as psychics work with spirit, you know, right now you're putting a lot of work into this driving lesson test, rather it's a theory test or practical, but it could be you're at the theory stage and you're putting a lot of time and effort into it. So the probability of you achieving that is very high. So when you go to a psychic and you ask, am I going to achieve it? Basically the psychic's picking up that energy with, you know, you're putting a lot of time and effort in achieving this. So the probability of you achieving it is yes. And that psychic may see a future where you are driving, you know. But again, if you leave that psychic, once you leave, wherever you got the psychic, however the psychic reading was done, if you don't put any work into your theory test or practical because you thought, well, I don't have to work at it because I'm going to pass this anyway, then, you know, chances are you're not. And that sort of alters the fate, you know, it changes the outcome. But with this client, my goddess Hecate sort of brought a lot of clarity into it and said, well, this person would pass it, but it would take them a lot of trial and error, and it did, but they drive now. So it's not always straightforward because sometimes you could go to a psychic and ask them that question right out, who am I going to pass my driving lesson test? And if you don't pass it, that's not a reflection of the psychic. It's just that psychic felt your energy and the probability of you achieving it was a strong yes. But, you know, you may pass it because you're putting all the work and that in first time. You may not pass it. You may have to try many times before you do. And it depends. It may be because that question may get a straight yes or no, depending on the psychic reader. Or the psychic reader may explain what they do feel it's a yes, but it's going to be a lot of trial and error. So you're not going to achieve it first time, but you're eventually going to get there. but sometimes it's a straight yes or no when you get a question, but more often not, when you go to a psychic and you ask a question, it's more the question's given to you, but in a way what makes sense to you, or sometimes a way you have to puzzle out yourself. Now, a blind reading is where you go to a psychic, you don't have a question in mind. Like, you go to a psychic, you just see what comes through. So you may get a palm reading, you may get your cards read, your tea leaves, you may get runes done, depending on who's the psychic is going to give you a reader, depending on what services they give. You may go in there, it could be a shop, it could be someone's house, it could be your own house, but they're going, wherever the reading takes place, you don't have a question in mind. You may, like, it's, even if you've got a question up here in your head and in your heart, but you don't tell the psychic what your question is, then it's still a blind reading, because a blind reading is where you don't tell the psychic what the question is, and they just see what comes through for you. So that's sort of the difference. A query reading is not where psychics bombarding you with lots of different questions and then try to make you think, but they never asked you any questions, but you just think. Most good psychics who are worth their salt will just ask you maybe your name, that's it, maybe your name, and, you know, and have some small talk with you, and they may ask you, is it a blind reading you want, or, you know, they'll explain their services to you and how they go about things and some ground rules, but they're not going to do the Spanish Inquisition on you and then at the end try and make you think you didn't tell them anything. Because, and when I do readings for people, they may have a question. I've done a few query readings. Most of the readings I've done have been blind, where the client didn't ask me a question, and I explained a few ground rules to them, and then I just asked their name and a bit of small talk, but mainly I don't ask them questions about their life because I don't want their life story. I just go with what comes through and how it feels, and I go, that's what I feel. You know, I feel you've been through this and this has happened to you. And at the end of the reading, I have a discussion with that client to see what resonated, what didn't, and if they've got any questions on that reading. But I hope this helps. And I'm just explaining the difference between a query reading and a blind reading. And I hope it helps and brings some guidance on this matter and subject as well. So until next time, stay safe, stay well, walk your spiritual path with pride, and for those of you who are witches like me, stay witchy. May meet, may part, and meet again. Blessed be.